come to the rink and try and win championships, and that's what it's all about. When you look from the outside and you watch this team, I know we're going to have a real good, solid hockey team this year.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host internationally, Eric Wilson. It's the first ever international episode of Fireside Rangers because, Eric, where are you right now?
I'm in Puerto Rico, which is technically still the U.S., but it's off the continental U.S., so we're just going to go with international because it sounds cooler.
We're going to call it international. It's debatable, right? It's debatable whether or not that's international, and it's also debatable whether or not Sammy Blais should be seeing as much ice time as he is. You like that transition, Eric? That was pretty slick, right? But that's the topic of discussion today. Should Julien Gauthier have a full-time spot on the lineup? And we want to debate, really, is he more deserving of it than Sammy Blais? And in Eric's very strong opinion, he is more deserving than Sammy Blais. So we're going to go ahead and dive into all that. But before we do, happy holidays, merry belated Christmas to everybody, and we hope that you all have a wonderful new year. And Eric, how are you doing today, my friend, over in Puerto Rico?
I'm doing good. You know, it's been a very relaxing week. You know, just been out doing stuff. So sorry to all the fans out there who were expecting a couple videos in the last couple of days. I'm a busy man, but we're back. No time off. Let's discuss.
Yeah, it's been a little tough to pump out the content without my partner in crime over there. He's really the engine that drives this car, but we're here, and we're going to make it work over in Puerto Rico. And today we're talking about Julien Gauthier, who has 121 games played in his career with 10 goals, 16 assists, and 26 total points at 25 years old. Now, Julien Gauthier had a real standout performance against the Islanders last week. It was a comeback victory for the New York Rangers. Third period went crazy. They came back and got the win, and Julien Gauthier had a big hand to play in that victory. But Eric, looking at the career of Julien Gauthier, how do you compare the rest of his career to this season that he's played so far? Now, I know he's not getting as much ice time as you think he deserves, but in the ice time that he's had, he's been rather impressive to the opinion of many Rangers fans. So how do you feel about his performance this year, and do you feel like he's really having a breakout season?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's having a breakout season as much as he can for a fourth-line player right there. And this is definitely his best season that we've seen throughout his career. You look back the last couple of seasons, he's always been one of those players who's never consistently in the lineup. He'll get called up for an injury or something like that. And then after a couple of games, he'll just get sent back down to Hartford. And he's never been too impressive over his career. He's always just looked like a solid depth player on the fourth line who just kind of does what they need to do in order to get the Rangers to a victory or at least close to one. You know, the last couple of seasons haven't been the best outside of last season. But then you look at him this season, he's gotten a lot more ice time. He's playing a lot more games. And not only is he continuing to be that role player that we need and getting the job done, but he's also managing to score a lot of goals, pick up a couple of assists, and he's just looked like really good all around. And he looks like a solid, steady NHLer for the first time in his career.
Yeah, and in the most recent game, he was playing on the fourth line alongside Barclay Goodrow and Johnny Brodzinski, playing that right wing position. And I think that what you're saying there is absolutely right. He's breaking out as much as he can while playing on the fourth line. As you mentioned, he only gets called up to play in certain games, depending on injuries or resting a player or whatever the case might be. But Julien Gauthier this season has done the most that he could with his time on the ice. I think that's the main thing to harp on here. And that's where we're going to tie in the Sammy Blais debate, because Julien Gauthier making the most of his ice time, but is Sammy Blais doing the same? Now, Sammy Blais is a 26-year-old who has played in 30 games this season with 0 goals, 5 assists, and 5 total points. No goals netted by Blais at all this year. Gauthier with 5 goals this season, 3 assists, so 8 total points, and 5 less games played, 25 games played for Gauthier. So when you compare those stats, it's very clear and obvious who has been more productive this season, and that is far and away Julien Gauthier. But Eric, Sammy Blais struggling to really find his groove this season, 0 goals on the year. Do you think it's time for the Rangers to just like phase him out of the lineup completely and hand that spot to Julien Gauthier? Or does he deserve a little bit more time to develop, get going, and then we can have a larger debate about him and Gauthier?
I think Blais does deserve a little more of a chance to really prove himself. You know, he hasn't played that much with the Rangers ever since we got him on the team. He's only played in like 50 to 60 games, somewhere in that range. And he hasn't scored a single goal in any of them going back from last season and this season. But it's kind of tough for him because when we got him, he was supposed to be a very good depth player, really work as that role, key player down on the bottom six. And then early in the season last year, it's like early November, we play against the Devils and he tears his ACL and is out for the season. So then now he's coming back into this season, hasn't played that much. I'm still coming back from like a pretty devastating injury. And it's hard to tell if he's just not as good as we want him to be, or if he still hasn't fully recovered from that yet and he just needs more time to transition back into playing professional sports. So it's like, it's sad. It's frustrating that most likely this is happening because of that injury. But at this point in the season where the Rangers are trying to make a playoff push, the trade deadline is coming up in like pretty much just like 2.5 months. And we kind of really just got to figure out this lineup, figure out who we want, who's going to give us the best chance to make the playoffs, and who we need to put on the trade block to get rid of come the trade deadline to improve the team. And at this rate, just based off of personal like thought and just how they've produced, it might just be time to say goodbye to Sammy Blais. As frustrating as it is, not his fault, but Julien Gauthier has been more productive this season. You know, in his career, Gauthier has only had 10 goals, and so far this season, he's at 5. So it's like he's already playing pretty much the best that he's played, even though those aren't record-breaking numbers by any means. It's just more productive than Sammy Blais, and given the circumstances, it might just be time to let him go.
Yeah, and I think that something that you mentioned there, the trade deadline looming large, right? And the Rangers maybe potentially trying to go out there and make some moves. Well, Sammy Blais' cap hit is much higher than Julien Gauthier. Sammy Blais' cap hit is $1.5 million. Gauthier only $800,000. So when you look at that, younger player, cheaper player, will be a restricted free agent this offseason. So you kind of do want to stick around with him because you have more room to work and it's less of a uncertainty going into the offseason for Gauthier. But Sammy Blais is an unrestricted free agent going into this offseason. So he has the ability to just walk away to any team that he wants. So if you're going to trade one of those two players ahead of this trade deadline, you're going to trade Sammy Blais. You free up more cap space, and he's less likely to be on the team next season than Julien Gauthier is in the first place. But I think that, you know, a couple other great points that you made, Sammy Blais probably reeling from that ACL injury. It's always tough to recover from a devastating injury like that. And so maybe he does need more time. But the real question that we have is, should Julien Gauthier have a full-time spot on the lineup, right? Because it's not necessarily completely about Sammy Blais' performance and him not living up to the standards that, you know, he was expected of. It's really just about how great Julien Gauthier has been and how he really does deserve more ice time. So, Eric, to really answer this video's question, should Julien Gauthier have a full-time spot on the lineup?
Yeah, I mean, I would say 100%. This lineup spot would definitely just be on the fourth line for now. Just act as like that depth key player that we've been talking about so far this episode. And the fourth line right now is him, Brodzinski, and I think you said Barclay Goodrow has been playing down there. And I think that's just like a really solid lineup. Obviously, Goudreau is probably the best player on there. Brodzinski's only played in like around 10 games so far this season. But since he's been called up, he's also looked really good. And he's had a pretty consistent spot in the lineup. The only one that really keeps changing is Gauthier and Blais. And, you know, Ryan Reeves used to be also in that rotation right there where just game in and game out, they would just keep switching who it would be, who's going to be there. And then obviously Reeves got traded. So now it's just come down to those two. And it's weird, the decision-making from the team, you know, because Gauthier will come in, have a really good game, look really strong, and then he'll instantly just be subbed out for Sammy Blais. And then Sammy Blais will play, not look that good. And then as soon as Sammy Blais has a really good game, they throw Gauthier right in. So it's like, it's really weird because we haven't gotten like enough content to look at and like games to see who's really good consistently and who's really bad consistently. Because the second one of them does good, they're just taken out of the lineup. Now, luckily for like the last 2 or 3 games straight, we've seen Gauthier, and he has looked really good there so far. So hopefully, you know, the organization is picking up on the fact that Gauthier is a productive player and will be consistent and help us get into a pretty solid playoff spot come the end of the season. So, yeah, I think Gauthier definitely is deserving of it, and hopefully management is starting to see that right now.
Yeah, and I think that I'm in the same boat as you. I completely agree. And I think that the Rangers are probably starting to pick up on it, you know, looking at the stats and seeing the production from Julien Gauthier. And again, I think that the Rangers are pretty forward thinking. They know what the cap hit is for both of these players, and they know what the contract looks like, one being a restricted free agent, one being an unrestricted free agent. So knowing that as we inch closer to the trade deadline, if the Rangers are going to make a move, you could argue, yeah, Julien Gauthier's improved performance so far this season makes him a more valuable trade piece. But in terms of what the Rangers want to get rid of, or which contract they want to get rid of more, it's going to be Sammy Blais' contract. So if they are going to package together a deal and throw in some of their lesser-known guys, Sammy Blais is very likely to be thrown into that conversation, probably traded away if they do make a splash for a big-time player in their top 6. But Julien Gauthier, I think he's had a great season so far. He's been really productive, and one of the things you said was it's been tough to tell, how good he is, because as soon as he does something good, he's right out of the lineup. Well, I think the big difference there is in his small sample sizes, his small spurts of ice time, he's been really impressive. And you can't really say the same about Sammy Blais. And so I think that when Julien Gauthier is turning heads and impressing the way that he is in that small sample size, it's reason enough to give him a larger sample size and give him more of an extended time in the lineup. And so, yeah, I agree with you. He should have a full-time spot on the lineup, and I'm curious to hear what everyone else thinks down in the comment section below on Fireside Rangers. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Comment your thoughts down below, and subscribe if you're new to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And we'll catch you all on the next one. Have a good one. Let's go Rangers, and happy holidays.
Oh, yeah, let's go Rangers. Forgot to say it.
He shoots. He's